Perfect. All right. So this morning we are going to walk through step by step how to use DocuSign. We're going to get started in Command, and we're going to follow the same process that you would when you have a transaction and you're working with a client. So to get started, I'm going to go to Opportunities. Opportunities is where we manage all of our sales pipeline and potential transactions. It's the icon of the two hands shaking over here on the left. So I'm going to click on that. And then I like to come up here to where it says all opportunities, because then I can just see a list of all the active opportunities that I have. Here is an opportunity for 1234 Main Street. So this is the opportunity that I created for today's training. I went through and I updated all the information as much as I could here about the opportunity name. So today, I do want to point out that we're going to be using a listing as our example. I know as newer agents, we usually spend more time working with buyers, but I do want to go through a couple unique documents in DocuSign that are very different for the listing side versus buying side. But everything else will be the same. So we have opportunity name, all of our information, estimated close date, estimated list price, and then I also have the property information here. It's important that I fill out as much information that I have at the time here in the details tab, because this information will be pulled directly into DocuSign. So just kind of make our lives a little bit easier once we're in there, so we don't have to type it in twice. So once I have all my details set up, I'm going to click on the Documents tab. And you'll see here, I don't really have anything set up, but over here on the left-hand side, it says Pick Checklist Type. So I'm going to click on this drop-down menu and I'm going to select residential. When I do that, it's going to give me these 3 folders listed under contract and closed. And within each one of the folders is going to have a list of documents. This is going to be kind of your checklist of documents that you will need or likely need when going through the transaction. And here's a requirement column. You can see it says required, conditional, conditional, required. If it's required, that means you absolutely have to have this document, and Lynn and Alita will need it in order to process your transaction. If it's conditional, that means that depending on the transaction, if that form is relevant, is it needed or not? So now let's get started with getting our DocuSign forms together. So one thing I do want to clarify here before we actually jump into DocuSign is that this is a list of documents that we're going to need to submit for compliance. However, no documents actually live in Command. All of the documents and all of the GAR forms that we're going to use live in DocuSign. So now let's get to the GAR forms. To do that, I'm going to click Start a Transaction up here in the top right-hand corner. It is very important that you click Start a Transaction, because by clicking Start a Transaction, you are going to create a room in DocuSign that is linked to Command. So this is going to be one of the main benefits of using DocuSign versus another e-signature platform, is that the two systems will actually speak to one another. And the benefit there is that as you make some updates in Command or within DocuSign, it'll sync that information with the other platform. Also, when you go to upload your documents, you don't have to download them from DocuSign and then manually upload them into Command. You can simply just upload them from DocuSign into Command. So it makes things a lot easier. But you must click Start a Transaction here in order for that room and the Command opportunity to be synced. You are unable to retroactively connect a room in DocuSign to a Command opportunity. So I'm going to click Start a Transaction. I do want to point out, if you have your pop-up blocker on, it may prevent this window from opening up, but it will open up in a new browser tab. So I'm just going to log in with my DocuSign credentials. All right. So now I'm in my DocuSign room. I know that because up here in the top left-hand corner, it says DocuSign Rooms. And then below that, I have the information about this specific room. My room name is 1234 Main Street Stark Potts Listing, which is the exact same name of my opportunity in Command. So that's how I know that the two are synced. It also pulls in the property address from command information, the details page, and also expected closing 1031, and that was in the details information as well. Before we do anything, today we're treating DocuSign as if this is the very first time we've ever used DocuSign. In order to have access to the GAR forms, we have to confirm our NERDS ID. This is what's going to let DocuSign know that we are a member of the National Realtor Association, National Association of Realtors, and the Georgia Association of Realtors, and we have permission to use the copywritten GAR forms. There are two ways that you can confirm your NERDS ID. We're going to walk through both of them. Once you confirm your NERDS ID, you should never have to do it again, kind of a one and done. The easiest way to do that is right here within this Documents tab. Up here in the top right-hand corner, you can click on Add, and then select DocuSign Forms. It's going to pop up this window with different logos on it. I'm going to select the National Association of Realtors logo. And then it's going to ask me for some information. So it's going to here, it's asking for my NERDS ID, which I don't know. But thankfully they include this quick link right here to find your member ID. So I can click on that, and it's going to open up another browser tab where I can use my last name, email address, and or license number to look up my NERDS ID. So I'm going to use my last name and license number and click submit. There we go. Now here's my 9-digit NERDS ID. So I'm just going to highlight that and copy that. One thing I do want to point out is when using your last name for searching this, if you've had a name change since you joined your realtor association or your board, you need to use the name that you used when joining, or you need to let your board know that you've had a name change. If the last names are not the same, it will give you an error message. So now I have my 9-digit NERDS ID. So I'm going to go back into DocuSign. I'm going to paste that in here. I'm going to type in my last name, which is the same that I used to join the Atlanta Realtor Board. And then I'm going to select Georgia Association of Realtors from the drop-down menu. And thankfully, it is now in alphabetical order. So I'm going to click Validate. It's going to let me know you've validated one association membership. And then if this is your very first time confirming your NERDS ID, you'd get a secondary pop-up window before this, asking you to accept the terms and conditions of the Georgia Association of Realtors and the forms. You would click accept. And then once you've done that, you'll get this pop-up window, which then will show you that you have access to the Georgia Association of Realtor forms. And here's all of the GAR forms. Any questions on what we just walked through of confirming our NERDS ID? All right. So really quickly, I'm going to show you the second way that you can confirm your NERDS ID. And this is probably going to be more if anything were to happen to your account and you had to, for whatever reason, reconfirm it. Up in the top right-hand corner, where you see your initials or your picture, click on that, and then select Preferences. And then over on the left-hand side, we'll select Integrations. And then here, we have it says our providers. You would click Add Provider, and it would be that same pop-up window, and you just go through those same steps as confirmed with the National Association of Realtors. Confirm your NERDS ID, last name, Georgia Association of Realtors, and you're good to go. Any questions on either way of confirming your NERDS ID? All right. Perfect. Well, I'm going to go back to the room that we just created for 1234 Main Street. Let me go back to the Documents tab. So I want to come back here to the Documents tab because every time I click Start a Transaction, it's going to drop me off into the Documents tab within DocuSign. My first instinct is always going to be, oh, let's just go ahead and start adding documents to my room so I can start filling out my listing agreement or my purchase and sale agreement. Don't do that. Before you start adding documents, let's go to the details tab here, and we're going to fill in all of the details that we know to date for this transaction, because this information here on the details tab is going to pre-populate all of the forms. So it's going to save you some time going through the forms and making sure everything is correct. So you'll on this page, you'll notice it's kind of broken up into two different sections. The left 2/3 of the page is going to be all about the actual property that's involved in this transaction. So the address, listing details, offer details, highest bid, closing details, all of that information. Then on the right-hand column, we have all the information about the actual people involved in the transaction. So like I said earlier, today we're going to be going through a listing. So you can see here that DocuSign pulled in my seller one information, which is Tony Stark. Here's his phone number, email address. Scrolling down, we have seller two. Here's her name and email address. At a minimum, when you have clients, you need their name, their legal name, how they're going to be signing documents, and their email address, so that way you can actually send them the documents for signature. Scrolling down, we have the listing agent information. So this is pulled over my information. I can just double check it and make sure everything is good to go. Listing agent two. So if I were working with another agent to list this property, I could put his or her information here. Continuing to scroll down, then we get to the buyer information. So today, since we are working on a listing, I'm not going to include any information about the buyer. It's not relevant to any of the forms that I need. I'll let the buyer's agent manage all that. However, I do want to show you that you do have to scroll down pretty far to get to the buyer information. So if you are working with a buyer, you would leave all of the seller information and listing agent information blank, and you would scroll down here to the buyer and make sure that your client's information is here. We have buyer two, and then we have buyer agent, and then you would want to make sure that your information is here in buyer agent. And if you have a buyer, another agent that you're working with, perfect, you can put their information here. All right, so now let's go through, double check and edit and add any information that we need before we get started in our documents. So I'm going to click the edit button up here in the top right-hand corner. And now I'm just going to go through and fill in all the information that I have. Local currency, we'll do US dollars. MLS ID. I'm just now getting my listing, my listing documents ready. So I haven't uploaded this into MLS yet, so I don't have an ID. Origin of lead, company room status, I don't need that. Our property address, 1234 Main Street, Atlanta, Fulton, everything looks good to go. Postal code, property type, we are going to do a residential detached. Year built, I'm going to go and let's do 2003. Special circumstances. Thankfully for this transaction, there are no special circumstances. Our listing date, we can go ahead and set that to be today's date. And our listing expiration date, let's do November 30th. Our listing amount, we'll do $415. I'm just going to copy that and then paste that into these other boxes. Scrolling down, we have our offer details. We haven't even listed the property yet, so nothing to put in there for offer. Same thing here with highest bid or closing details. And then the additional information here, you don't need to put that in there. Perfect. So everything for the property is good to go and updated. Now let's double check the information for the seller one and seller two. So Tony, now I do realize that Tony is not a legal name, or is oftentimes not the legal name, but just for today's example, we'll just leave that as his legal signing name. We have his email address, good to go. We have Pepper Potts. Here's her email address, which is just my personal email, but I'll correct that. Scrolling down. We have my information here. One thing you can do if you want to, in the name of our company. So it's Keller Williams Realty First Atlanta. You do have the ability to delete realty out of the name. Lynn and Alita have confirmed that's good to go. It's really kind of doesn't make a ton of difference, other than when we get into some of the forms, the company name will kind of bleed over on some of the other text on the forms, but not a huge deal. Scrolling down, everything is good to go. So I don't have a co-op agent or a co-listing agent for this. So I'm going to go ahead and click save down here in the bottom right-hand corner. Perfect. Room has been updated. So now our next step is to start adding our DocuSign forms. So to do that, I'm going to click on the Documents tab. And then here I have a blank room. I have my room docs folder, which is going to be my default folder for all things in this Documents tab. Now, I do want to point out that Lynn and Alita are never going to look at your DocuSign room. So you can have this organized any which way that you please. It can be as organized or as messy as you want. I know some agents that are going to really want things super organized and have multiple folders for different types of forms. That's a-okay. If you want to have different folders, you can come up here to the Actions button in the top right-hand corner, select Add Folder. And I'm going to create a listing agreement folder. I'll just name it listing agreement. Click create. I've added that new folder. And then I want to have my, let's just do my signed contract. So I'll do a contract folder. Perfect. Click create. So now I have my 3 different folders here. I do want to point out the room docs folder is anytime that you have a new form that is added into the room, whether it's you've added it so you can start editing it, you've uploaded it, or we've received a signed document back from our clients, it's going to default into the room docs folder. We can then just quickly move it to whichever folder we want in here. So now we can start adding some documents. So to add our GAR forms to our room, I'm going to click on Add up here in the top right-hand corner. And then I'm going to select DocuSign Forms. And we're going to get this pop-up window here with a bunch of different options. On the left-hand side, we have it broken up into groups and libraries. Down here at the bottom, we have our libraries. There's a couple FMLS forms. I don't know why we have access to the Greater Alabama forms, but they're there. And below that is going to be the GAR forms. This is going to be all 180 GAR forms, which is great. So you have access to all of them. If you're looking for a form, you can just come up here and you can just type in the form name that you want. So you can see here that when I type in purchase and sale, it brings up like 20 different options. So you do need to be mindful to make sure that you add the correct form because a lot of them are named very similar. So if I scroll down here, here's my GAR purchase and sale form, F201. So one thing that you'll start to learn is the actual form numbers. So rather than having to type in purchase and sale, I can just type in F201 and it's going to bring up my exact form that I need. Since there are so many GAR forms and there are numerous commonly named forms, I've gone through and created groups up here. So I've had a buyer's packet and a seller's packet. So if you come here to the buyer's packet, this is going to be probably 80–85% of the forms that you are likely going to use when working with buyers. So this way, it's going to be a lot easier for you to scroll through here and find the forms that you'll need. I also have the same thing set up here for the seller's packet. And it lets you know that this form is required. So it's much easier for me to come here and here's my listing agreement. Here's my community association agreement. My seller's property disclosure. So I have the traditional single family or single detached home. And then here's the condo exhibit. So I'm going to select the single family one. And we are good to go here. Perfect. So here are all the forms. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add the purchase and sale agreement to our forms that we're using today. I know traditionally when working with a seller, you're likely not going to be the agent filling out the original purchase and sale, but knowing that it's going to be such a commonly used form in your real estate career, I want to make sure that you are comfortable with filling that in. So I'm going to come over here, search F201, click on that. So now I selected all the forms that I need. Up here in the top of the form of this window, it says selected for. I can click on that and it's going to show me the 4 documents that I've selected. I'm going to click add selected. And it's going to load those forms into my room docs folder. Any questions on searching for the GAR forms, finding them and adding them into our room? All right. Perfect. So now that we have our documents that we want to start using, I'm going to go ahead and move them into the correct folders. So I want to put everything that's related to my listing agreement into my listing agreement folder. There's 2 ways that you can move forms in DocuSign. The first is if you see the checkbox in the top left-hand corner of the icon for each form, you can check that. And then whenever you select that document, this toolbar will appear at the top and you can roll your mouse over the different icons to see what they are. And you can click on move, select a destination, folder in current room. And then I'm going to select listing agreement, click move, and the page will reload and it's moved those 2 documents into my listing agreement folder. The other way, which is pretty easy, is I can just roll my mouse over the document icon, hold my mouse down and drag it into my desired folder. This is super easy. So I'm going to do the same thing here with my purchase and sale agreement. Let's scroll up and put that into my contract folder. So that is how easy it is to move those documents. All right, so now that we have our documents in our room, we've added them into the correct folders. Let's start updating our documents. So I'm going to get started with the exclusive seller listing agreement. So I'm just going to click on that to open it up. Give that a second to load. I will say sometimes DocuSign is a little slow. Be patient. Give it some time to load. I promise it will work. So with everything, whether it's Command or DocuSign, I recommend start at the top of the page and we'll just work our way down, filling in the information that we have and that we need. Here we have our listing agreement. You can see here some of this information has already been pre-populated based on the information that we've added in the documents or in the details tab. So that's really helpful. Here I need to add my tax parcel ID. So I'd get that from the tax information. So I'm just going to make up a tax ID for now. Below that, we have our legal description and we have 4 different options here. It is recommended from Lynn and Alita that we use and attach as an exhibit here too. So if you can find the limited warranty deed, you can, if you can't find that in the tax records, you can reach out to one of our Alliance closing attorney partners, and they're usually able to get that. I know Campbell and Brannon and McMichael and Gray both have specific email addresses that you can email and ask for, and they'll get it to you usually pretty quickly. But this is recommended. If not, you can always use the deed book page, which you can get that from the tax records as well. But I'm going to select attach as an exhibit here too. Continuing to scroll down, we have our list price, which has been automatically added from the details tab. Our commencement date, we'll go ahead and we'll set this up for today is 9/30/2022. And I do want to point out that when you are typing in the when you are typing in dates in DocuSign, please put them in numerical format. A long time ago, if you type them out, like if you actually typed, spelled out September, it would get a weird error and it would just kind of delete everything that you had added. So just recommend just go ahead and putting it in numerical order. So our commencement date starts today, and we'll have this end on November 30th, 2022. our marketing here. We're going to do FMLS, Georgia MLS, and KWLS. One thing I do want to point out while we're here, today's training is how to use DocuSign. It is not the correct information to fill in on these forms. So while I will go through and I will try to add in the most correct information, I'm going to go through and I will use some shorthand, some abbreviations like I did here. I would not recommend putting any abbreviations on a form, a GAR form that you're sending to a client. And if and when you have any questions on what the correct information is, please reach out to Lynn and Alita or our Alliance Closing Attorney partners for that information. All right. I just want to put that in there so that way there's no confusion. Like, well, Nick typed this out, and it's like, well, this is just for training purposes today. All right. So delivery of agreement and listing with MLS. So we're going to put this in FMLS by tomorrow, October 1st, 2022, and we'll have that at least in there within 5 days. All right. Continuing to scroll down, we have our commission section. So I have negotiated with my sellers. I'm going to take 6%, and I'm going to share half of that with my co-op agent. Commission adjustment. Nope. Separate commission on a lease. So let's go ahead and do NA. Protected periods. I like to negotiate 90 days. Agency and brokerage. We do not offer dual agency and sub agency. So you can see this form is super easy. You just go through, click into the text boxes or the check marks and fill in your information. Super, super easy. Broker does not consent acting in dual agency. We do not have dual agency permissions here at First Atlanta. Negotiation, the seller does authorize me to assist in negotiations. Continuing to scroll down, this is where we get through all the explanation of what those first 2 pages were. Keep scrolling. All right, now we get to our brochures. So brochures are going to be some additional information that we can provide to our clients. So go here and check which ones you are going to actually send your client. I also have set up groups for that. So you can see there's the buyer's brochures and seller's brochures. And then below that, we have our exhibits and addenda. So I'm going to select legal description. I'm going to make that exhibit A. Below that, we have our special stipulations. So if you have any stipulations that you want to add here, you can just go ahead and type them in. I know there's a lot of talk about when having the conversation about pricing with our clients, going ahead and adding a stipulation that says that if we are not under contract or negotiating within a certain amount of time after listing, we can go ahead and agree to a price reduction. So we can just go ahead and I'll type that all parties acknowledge and agree that if the listed property at 1234 Main Street is not under contract or actively negotiating, an offer, we will reduce sales price by $10,000. We're negotiating an offer after 10 days of listing, we will reduce sales price by $10,000. You can add any additional steps you like. You can just click in here and just start typing away. I wouldn't have too many steps, but You'll learn throughout your career which ones that you want to use, especially if you worked with other agents, they may recommend some that you use, and as well as our alliance closing attorney partners. So those are all the steps that I'm going to use. If for whatever reason you have a ton of stipulations and you need the additional stipulation page, you can click here to check this here, and then add form for form F246, and you can add it in your additional steps there. Right. Scrolling down, we get to our last page. You can see here it adds our clients' names and email addresses, so we're good to go. And then below here, we'll double check my information and fill in all the missing forms, our missing fields. So MLS code KWFA01 H33313. Now, I do want to point out that you are able to make form templates with this that would add, that you can automatically add this information, knowing that it's going to be the same every single time you fill out a form. But that's more of a DocuSign 2.0 feature that I talk about in the Take Command classes. Right. So we have everything filled out. Make sure everything's good to go. Now I'm going to click Save and Close, either down here at the bottom of the screen or up here in the top right-hand corner. Be sure to click Save and Close, because if you accidentally just click the X, it will not save any of the information that you just filled out. So I'm going to click Save and Close. Perfect. So the next one we're going to fill out is going to be our seller's property disclosure. So it's the seller's property disclosure, the community association disclosure, and the lead-based paint disclosures that are the unique forms to working with sellers that have a different process than what we will normally do. And that's what I wanted to make sure we walk through today. So I'm going to click on the seller's property disclosure to open it up. And then we'll let it load, and then we'll do the exact same thing that we just did with the listing agreement. Start at the top, and we'll work our way down, filling out the information. So seller's property disclosure exhibit. This is not an exhibit yet to a contract, so I can leave this blank. Scrolling down, we don't have an offer date, so I can leave that blank as well. The property address is already added. Now, as I scroll down, you'll see here's a bunch of places for text boxes and check boxes, but I don't have access to any of them. They're all, looks like they're missing, but they are in fact not. The reason is the seller's property disclosure, community association disclosure, and the lead-based paint disclosure are meant to be filled out by the seller. This is to gather information from the seller. So we don't, as a listing agent, we don't even have the ability to add in any information here. So I'm just going to scroll through and make sure there aren't any fields that I do need to fill in. So I'll just scroll down. See anything here for me. Keep scrolling. We get to the end. We have our clients' names. Good to go. Oh, one more thing I want to point out while we're here. You'll notice that I don't actually have any signature boxes here. That's a-okay. The signature boxes are not added until we get to the envelope when we were about to send these documents for signature. When we are in the Documents tab of DocuSign, this is where we're just going through and filling in the information on the forms. We're not adding signatures yet. So here we go. I'm just going to click Save and Close. Good to go there. All right. Then the next one we are going to do is our community association disclosure. So I'm just going to click on that to open it up. All right. And just like we did with the seller's property disclosure, start at the top, work our way down. We don't have an exhibit to a contract yet. We don't have an offer date. And just like the seller's property disclosure, the community association disclosure doesn't allow me to type in any of this information. This is all going to be mapped to my seller, so my sellers can fill this in. But again, I do just want to give it a double check to make sure there's nothing on here that I do need to fill in. All right. There we have our names. Perfect. Good to go. So I'm going to click Save and Close. Any questions on updating the listing agreement or the disclosures before we jump into the purchase and sale agreement? Anything else that we've walked through this morning that I can clarify or show you again before we move on? All right, perfect. So now let's walk through the purchase and sale agreement. This is the form that I understand that as a listing agent, we will likely not be the ones to originate, but because it is such an important form, I do want to make sure that we walk through it today. So I'm going to click the form to open it up. All right. And then just like with the previous forms, we'll start at the top, work our way down, filling in the information that we have. So we'll start here with offer date. So I'm going to select today's date as an offer. The property address looks good to go. MLS number. Now, this is assuming that we've gone ahead and we've listed this in FMLS. So I'm going to go ahead and type in this FMLS number and then the tax parcel ID, which is similar to the one that I made up earlier. I have my legal description attached as an exhibit here too. Again, if the listing agent does not provide the legal description, you can ask Campbell and Brannon, McMichael and Gray, McManamy if they have it, and they can pull that for you and get it to you pretty quickly. All right, scrolling down, purchase price paid by the buyer. So it's originally listed at $415,000, and my buyers want to pay $410,000, and they want the seller to pay $3,500 in closing costs. Perfect. Just add that in there. Closing date. We don't want to actually close on Halloween. Let's see what Halloween is on Monday. So let's close on Friday the 28th. So we'll update that to Friday the 28th. And possession will be at closing. So for law firm, I'm going to use Campbell and Brannon, Glenridge. Phone number, I don't know that off the top of my head, but I know it's 770 something, something, something. Perfect. So I'm just adding that phone number. Holder of earnest money, I'm going to have Keller Williams First Atlanta hold that earnest money, and that is going to be deposited by or paid by check within 3 days of binding. And we are going to offer, let's do $4,500 for earnest money. Scrolling down, we have our inspection and due diligence. So we want to ask for 10 days due diligence. Scrolling down, our lead-based paint. The home was built in 2003, so I don't need to worry about lead-based paint. Scrolling here, we have our brokerage relationship. So Keller Williams First Atlanta. This is where I was mentioning earlier that if you can delete realty out of the name because it overlaps some of the other text. So I'm going to select myself as the client, and then the buyer's brokerage is we'll just do Harry Norman. And they are representing their buyer as a client. I guess we can do, you can leave that blank, and then material relationship. I am not aware of any material relationships. And we'll have this offer go until tomorrow at 12 p.m. on 10/1/2022. All right. And we will scroll down. Now we get into the explanation of all the fields on the first page. I'm scrolling. All right, so now we have our exhibits and addenda. So here we're going to go through and check all the exhibits that we want to attach and give them letters. So I don't know for whatever reason why the all cash sale exhibit is checked. Just uncheck it. So we are going to use our seller's property disclosure. We have our community association disclosure. We have our legal description. We are also going to have a loan exhibit. Well, I guess we don't have that. So these are going to be our exhibits. So I have the order that I like to put my exhibits in. Everyone's different. I like to have my seller's property disclosure as Exhibit A, then community association as Exhibit B. Then we'll have legal description as Exhibit C. So we've checked them that they are included as exhibits to the contract and the exhibit letters. Scrolling down, we have our special stipulations section. So similar to the stipulations that we wrote for on the listing agreement, we can add those here. So you can type in any stipulation. One stipulation I like to do to add is about closing date. All parties acknowledge and agree that closing will occur on or before 10/28/2022. So I like to put that in there just in the event that, like, oh, if we can close earlier, or if I'm doing a long close, like a 60-day close, we can, that way it just minimizes the amount of paperwork I have to do. But you can just add as many stipulations as you want. And if you don't know how to write the stipulation, again, reach out to Lynn and Alita, or you can ask our attorney partners. They'll be happy to help you write that up. They probably already have a stipulation that they can share with you just to copy paste. All right, so scrolling down, we get to our signature page here. So you can see that we have our clients' names and email addresses. Perfect. Now, one thing I like to point out is I don't share my client's contact information with the co-op agent. Now, I'm sure that 9 times out of 10, that co-op agent is going to be very respectful of my relationship with my clients. However, you never know. That if maybe the co-op agent's going to try to cut me out of the deal, or be like, hey, in this example, sellers, we could cut your commission if you just work with me and blah blah blah. So what I would instinctually think is like, oh, I'll just delete my client's email address here. Don't do that. Do not delete or edit any of the pre-filled fields on these forms that are connected back to that details tab, because if I delete it or edit here on any of the GAR forms, it's going to edit or make that or delete it in the document or in the details tab, excuse me. Then when I go to send these for signature, there won't be an email address to send to for my clients. So I will show you when we're in the envelope how you can hide your client's email address to protect them. But again, that is a personal preference. So I'm going to scroll down, double check, make sure all my fields are filled in. So I'm just going to fill in the missing ones that I have here. MLS 01. Perfect. Now here you could theoretically go through and fill in the co-op agent's information. That is a nice gesture. It just minimizes the amount of work that co-op agent would have to do in order to get their clients to sign. But as I mentioned earlier, we never want to send any GAR forms through DocuSign to a co-op agent for signature. All right, so now that we have everything good to go, I'm going to click Save and Close. This is a second to save. Perfect. So now that we have all of our documents together, our next step is going to be to send these for signature. But before we do that, I just want to check in. Any questions, comments, anything I can show you again from what we've gone through so far? All right, perfect. So our next step is to send these for signature. The way that we do that in DocuSign is through an envelope. And the way that Michael New explained envelopes to me, I really like it. So I'm going to use the same analogy. Is he said, think of envelopes in DocuSign like a manila envelope in real life. Imagine you had printed out all of your GAR forms and you filled them in by hand using a pen. You then took those forms, you organized them, and you put them in that manila envelope and put that on the corner of your desk until you got to see your clients. Then when you saw them, you took that manila envelope and you handed it to them and said, please review these documents and sign. Envelopes and DocuSign are the same thing. They are just a means to organize and transport documents to other parties. There are two ways that we can create envelopes. The first is here within the Documents tab. You can select the forms that you want to send for signature. And when you select these forms, this toolbar will appear. And then you can roll your mouse over to the Create Envelope icon. That will take you into the envelope. You're good to go there. This feature is going to be really helpful once you get further into transaction and you have a lot of documents in your Documents tab. But I want to show you the other way of creating an envelope. And to do that, I'm going to click on Envelopes here. And then up in the top right-hand corner, I'm going to select New. Give this a second to load. Perfect. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add documents to my envelope. So I do want to point out there have been changes to the envelope page that we are now that were just released within the last couple of weeks. So if you've gone back and watched any of my other videos, this will look a little bit different. This is a new feature. There are some new features here. So I'm going to click Add Documents, Add Room Documents. It's going to show me the different folders that I have, so I can go through each folder. Nothing there. My contract folder. I'm going to add my purchase and sale. Come back to my listing agreement, and I'm going to add all 3 of these forms. So now I have selected all 4 forms. I'm going to click Add Selected. Give those a second. There we go. Perfect. Now, in addition to these GAR forms, we also need to get our affiliated marketing disclosure and our wire fraud prevention disclosure signed as well. Those are here in the envelope as a template. So when you get here to this place and you're adding the documents, click on Use a Template. Then I'm going to select Shared with Me. We'll give this a sec. This does take a minute to load, so definitely have patience here. And this is going to load all of the documents that the MCA office has shared with us as templates. So you can use any of these, and I'll point out which ones we need for this transaction as soon as this loads. All right. Perfect. So you can see here we have a bunch of different documents. I am going to, let's sort by name. Jeez, I didn't think it would take that long. All right. Well, we'll just give it some time to resort. All right, perfect. So scrolling down here, we have our buyer-affiliated marketing and buyer-wire fraud. And then if I scroll down some more, I have seller-affiliated marketing and seller-wire fraud. These are actually the same forms for the seller and the buyer. The only difference is going to be the mapping of the signature fields. So be sure to add the version of these disclosures based on which side of the transaction you are working and representing. So today we are working with the seller. So I'm going to select seller affiliated marketing and seller wire fraud disclosure. Click Add Selected. All right. Now I've added all the documents that I want to send for signature. However, they're just currently in alphabetical order when they were added. I want to put them in a specific order. I want my clients to review the listing agreement, then the disclosures, then the purchase and sale agreement. So to reorganize them, you have to do it here at this stage. You will not be able to move them in any order once we move on to the next part. So to reorganize them, just roll your mouse over the document icon click your mouse down, and then drag into the desired position. So we'll start with our listing agreement. Then we'll have our seller's property disclosure, our community association disclosure, and then I want my affiliate marketing and wire fraud. So I'm going to drag my purchase and sale into that last position. Now I have the forms in my desired list. So I like to start with my listing agreement, the disclosures, and I would do the same thing with any of the exhibits after a purchase and sale agreement as well. If you need to upload a form, so let's say that you have you've received a disclosure from a co-op agent, or there's another form that you like to use, you can click upload here, and you can upload that from your computer, and that would add that here as well. All right, our next action is going to be to add recipients to our envelope. Now you can see here, it's going to show us we have buyer 1, seller 2, buyer 2, buyer agent. It's just going to pull up all of the roles that are included in any of the forms that we have added. We only need to include the recipients that are actually going to be signing. So for here, for buyer 1, I can delete that. I don't need buyer 1. Buyer 2, I can delete that. Delete. I can delete buyer agent. And then we have listing agent. Perfect. Now you'll notice here that we have seller 1 and seller 2 on here twice, because one of them is for the templates that we just added for those disclosures. So now we need to add our names here. So I'm going to click here, and I'm going to click on room participants. Sorry, room contacts. All right, and so for seller 1, I'm going to set that to be Tony Stark. Apply selected. For seller 2, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to click on this little icon of a person, select room contacts, make that Pepper Potts, add selected. And then we have listing agent, and I'm going to select myself from the room contacts and myself. So this is the information, the contact information that we added on the details tab. Click add selected. Perfect. So the next step we have is to set a signing order. So it's going to default to setting signing order. That just means that person 1 has to sign and complete before it goes on to person 2. So to do that, let's set seller 1 as signer 1, and then seller 2 will be signer 2. So I'm just going to update this. I'm going to click into the box and update that. So Pepper and then Tony will be signer 1. Pepper Potts will be signer 2. And then I will be signer 3. Perfect. So you can see here that we have Tony will receive all the documents first. He can go through, fill in everything, send it for signature or sign it. Then it will go to Pepper, and then it'll go to myself. You don't have to use a signing order. So if you don't want to set a signing order, you can uncheck that as well. Within each one of these recipient boxes, we have a couple drop-down menus. So the first one here is needs to sign. This is going to default to needs to sign, but there's a drop-down of all the different permissions that they need. More than likely, needs to sign is going to be good to go. If they need to receive a copy, so let's say you need to send it to a closing attorney, or maybe there's a parent or a spouse involved that's not actually signing any of the documents, but they just want to review them, you could select their permission as needs a copy. If you select needs to view, the person will actively have to go through, review the documents, and click finish. So sometimes people are like, oh yeah, just send it to me and I'll take a look at it. And then they don't ever actually do it, and it holds up the entire process. So those are going to be your main options there. And then we have this customized dropdown, which is we can add an access code. So if you have a client that is uncomfortable with e-signatures, you can add an access code that they're going to be required to fill in before they're allowed to sign So, let's say Tony's afraid someone's going to hack his email and start, buying a house on his behalf. Well, we can add in this access code of 12345. And I would say, hey, Tony, before you're able to sign, please type in 12345. And that way the system will know that it is you. I don't actually want to use that today, so I'm going to delete that. And then our other option is to add a private message. So as seller one, Tony is going to be responsible for filling in all of the information on the seller's property disclosure and the community association disclosure. So I'm going to type a quick message that's only going to go to Tony. Hi, Tony. Please be sure to fill in all of the information on the seller's property disclosure and community association disclosure. Thank you, Nick. Perfect. So we're good to go with recipients. Any questions on adding recipients? Perfect. All right. Now we'll scroll down. If you need to add any more recipients, you can do that here. Now we're going to update or send a quick message. So here, I'm going to recommend your email subject line be please DocuSign. And this will be 1234 Main Street, exclusive seller listing agreement and purchase and sale agreement. I do want to point out that this is going to be the name of your envelope. So as you're going throughout a transaction, you're going to have numerous envelopes that you're sending. So make sure that it is something that you can easily go back and reference if you need to double check something. Hi, Tony and Pepper. Please review and sign all of the forms for the sale of your home at 1234 Main Street. Thank you, Nick. Perfect. So now that we've gone through, we have added our documents up here. We've added our affiliated marketing and wire fraud disclosures, and then we've put them in the correct signing order that we want. We've added our recipients. We've put them in the correct signing order. We've made sure that their permissions are correct. Add a little private message for Tony. Scroll down. We have a quick message to our recipients. Now our next step is to click next. And this is, perfect. Yes, envelope contains duplicate recipients at the same signing order. Let's merge recipients. That's going to make things much easier. This is a new feature that they just recently launched. Perfect. So now we are in the envelope editor. This is where we're going to be able to go through, double check, make sure that all the signature fields are there, all the initial fields, date fields, and we're going to double check to make sure that all of those fields associated with the seller's property disclosure and community association disclosure are there. There's a lot of information on this page, so before we actually jump into looking at the forms, let's go through the layout. So up here, starting in the top left-hand corner, is an arrow to go back. So if you were like, oops, I made a mistake, and you go back and edit something, or you're like, I don't need to send this right now, you can click the go back arrow. This DocuSign automatically saves your work like every 2 or 3 seconds, so you should be pretty good with that. Below that, you can see we have Tony's name in a drop-down menu with a yellow circle. Below that, we have all of our standard fields that we can add to our forms. And you notice that the icons are all yellow. If I click on this drop-down menu, I have Pepper and myself, and we each have a corresponding color. So if I click on blue, all of the icon colors change to blue. Same thing with myself, they turn to purple. That is so I can more quickly visually identify which fields on all these forms are assigned to which recipient. So I know anything that's purple is going to be to me, anything yellow is going to be Tony. In the middle of the page, we have our preview of the document. So we can just double check, make sure that all of the information is correct. You can change the zoom in or zoom out if you want to. And then over here on the right-hand side, we have a drop-down menu with thumbnails of all of the forms. So this way I can just quickly double check, make sure everything is good to go. And then you'll notice that on this last page where there are some signature fields, I have these quick little tabs each with the corresponding color to the recipient. So I know that there is a signature field or a signed field on this page. So I can click on this and it's going to take me right here to show me here the signature fields, date fields. This is assigned to Tony. This is assigned to Pepper. Scrolling down, here's myself, and this is assigned purple for me. It's going to be the same thing for all of these forms. Now you'll see here in the seller's property disclosure, we have yellow tabs on every page. And that is because here on the seller's property disclosure, all of these text fields, which are outlined in yellow, so we know they're assigned to Tony, so are for Tony to fill in the information about the property. So now that we kind of know the layout of it, let's go through the forms. Let's double check all the information and let's make some quick edits to make it easier for our clients to fill in the information. So we'll just start up here, our listing agreement. Now, for whatever reason, the legal description checkbox here is no longer there. So I'm just going to add one. I'm going to select myself, click on checkbox, add that right there. And I'm going to double check it. And I'm going to select read only over here. So whenever you check or have a standard field highlighted, you get this menu over here. So I'm going to select read only. The benefit of read only means that it's going to show up every single when every single person goes to sign. So it just makes it a little bit easier. Continuing to scroll down, all of the information is looking good. All right, keep scrolling. Get to the last page. Here's our stipulations that we added. So you can see how those show up. Signature page, signature, date signed, good to go. Signature, date signed. Now, on the listing agreement, since I've set myself up to be the last person, I can actually go ahead and make this document binding when I sign. So that's just going to save me a couple steps later on to make it binding before I upload for a compliance review. So to do that, I'm going to click text. I'm going to add a text box right here. I'm just going to format that to fit. And then one thing I really like about DocuSign is that I can just Control C, Control V, and I can just copy that text box and put that right there. And then I'm going to add the date signed box right here. And that's going to automatically add the date when I sign it. And so this will just save me from having to go in and do some extra work. But since it won't, Tony and Pepper will not have the ability to edit these text boxes, just me. That's why they're assigned purple. Up here, when I click on the text box, we have the option of required field and read only. Required means that the system is going to stop me and I have to fill in information on this field or sign it or whatever before I'm allowed to go on to the next field. Anytime you see a text box that's filled in with a color, that means that it is a required field. If I had checked unrequired, it would be just outlined in purple, but I want to make sure this is required. So continuing to scroll down, we have our seller's property disclosure. Now this is the form that I wasn't able to fill in any of the information because it's all assigned to Tony. But you'll notice that all of these text boxes and check boxes are all outlined in yellow, which means that they are not required. So when Tony goes to sign, it's going to jump from signature field to required field to required field, and it's going to jump right over all these fields on the disclosure that he needs to fill in. A fun little trick that you can do is here for this first question, 1A, what year was the main residential dwelling constructed? Click on that text box and then check required. Now that text box is filled in yellow, so the system is going to stop Tony and say, Tony, you have to fill in this text box. And then it's going to be much easier for him then to scroll down and fill in all of the remaining text boxes and check boxes. We're going to go through here, just make sure everything is correctly assigned to Tony. Everything looks good to go. Perfect. Now we have our signature page, the signature, date signed. Good to go. Our next document is our community association disclosure. So this is going to be the same like we just talked through for the seller's property disclosure. Now, I don't know what type of membership association they have, so I don't want to make any of these checkboxes mandatory or required. But I'm going to go right here and I'm going to select name of association and I'm going to make this required. So in the same process, the system is going to stop here and make sure Tony fills in this form or this field, and then it'll be easier for him to go through and fill in the remaining text fields for the community association disclosure. Just going to give this a quick once over. Make sure there's nothing missing. Good to go. Then we have our affiliated marketing disclosure. So here's Tony Pepper signature, good to go. Tony and Pepper, good to go there. Now we have our purchase and sale agreement. We have our initial fields here, good to go. Right. Just keep scrolling through here. We have our exhibits and our special stipulations that we've added. We have our signature field. Now, remember I mentioned earlier that I don't like to share my client's contact information with co-op agents. So it is here that I'm able to hide their contact information. So to do that, I'm going to come over here to the far left where I have this pencil icon. That's called pre-filled tools. I'm going to select that. And I'm going to click on line. And then I'm just going to add a line right over my client's email address. Now, obviously, that is a thin red line. It is, you can still tell what the email address is. If I come over here, I can select color. I can pick color. I'm going to select black, click done. And then I can increase the thickness to 10. Then I can just move that right here, and that hides my client's email address. Now, I know a black bar is not the most beautiful thing to look at, but it does its job in protecting my client. So I'm just going to right mouse click, or I'm just going to Control C, Control V, and then I'll drag that down here. And now I've protected both sellers from the co-op agent. Scrolling down, we'll just double check, make sure that my signature field is good to go. All right, everything looks good to go. Any questions on the envelope editor, any of the fields, the standard fields, pre-tagged field, or pre-filled fields before we start sending these documents for signature? All right. So if you just want to give this one last triple check, you can up here in the top right-hand corner, you can click on preview. And this is going to load a preview where you can select to either view as your clients or yourself. So let's select Tony. So this is what it's going to be like when Tony goes to sign. And this is just a preview. This isn't actually going to sign anything. But one thing I do want to point out is we have a desktop view. We have a tablet view, so what it's going to look like if they were to sign on a tablet, and then if they sign on a mobile device. So if you're working with clients and they're like, hey, we really want this house, we love it, we need to get our offer over as soon as possible, but we have a dinner reservation at this restaurant we've been trying to go to for months, we can't miss it to be at home to sign for the DocuSign. I'll say, you know what, go to lunch or go to dinner. I will send you a text message that lets you know when the documents are in your inbox, and then you can just go through and sign them on your phone. Now, it's going to be kind of hard to read. This is not very legible, but they do have the ability to sign, and you can get your paperwork and get that over to the co-op agent. So you can just click here and click start and just kind of jump through the process of what it's going to be like for Tony. When you're done with the preview, you can click the X up here in the top right-hand corner. And now when we are ready to send, I can click send, or we have this really cool option of sending later. So if you want to go ahead and set this up to send, at a certain time, or let's say you're working and it's late at night and you're like, I don't want to send these paper, these documents at 1 o'clock in the morning. You can go ahead and set them to send at 7:30 or whatever. So I'm going to go ahead and click send. Perfect. It is sent. Here's my envelope. It's letting me know that it's waiting on others. So now we're going to go through the process to sign as each one of the participants. So I'm going to set this up. Let me log into my email here. And I am going to pull up my tech email. Perfect. So this is going to be me signing as Tony. You can see here is our new email that says, please DocuSign 1234 Main Street. Scrolling down. Here's our message to Tony and Pepper, but here's that private message that shows up just for Tony. Please be sure to fill in the information on the disclosures. Tony's going to click review documents. He's going to agree to use electronic records and signatures. Continue. So click start, sign. It's going to ask him if he wants to draw his own or whatever. You can just click adopt and sign. And then here we go to the seller's property disclosure. And you can see it stops here on this, what year is the main dwelling constructed? So we can fill in 2003. And then Tony can easily go through here and check all this stuff. And he can type in additional info here. And I'm just going through, I'm just checking random boxes. I'm not paying attention to what I'm doing. But I just want to show you what it's going to look like when Pepper goes to sign. Let's do 7/1/2022. 8 years. So pretty easy. I'm going to skip all this stuff just for time. I'm going to go to this page and I'm just going to check a bunch of things here. All right. Tony will sign. And then we're going to go to the community association disclosure where you can select which type. So we have a mandatory community association disclosure. And this is, we'll just type in the name of the HOA. We'll do Jane Doe. Let's do Property Management Associate Company of America. I'm just making this up. $1,500. This is paid quarterly, and there are no special assessments. Let's do $250. This includes natural gas and common area. There's not any litigation, no violations. Sign, 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 initial, sign. And you can see here's the black bar that protects Tony's email. Now that Tony's finished signing and filling in the information, he must click the finish button. So when you're talking with your clients, be sure to explain to them, once you're going through and you're signing, be sure to click the finish button. Because if you don't click it, then it's not going to recognize that you've completed this signature. It's going to ask if they want to create their own account. You can click no thanks. And now Tony's received the you've finished signing page. It's important that your clients get this. If they do not receive the you've finished signing, that means it's not, they haven't finished. And then Pepper will not be able to receive the documents for her to sign. So I'm going to close this. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to open up my personal email. And you can see here, we have, please DocuSign. And then here's a message to Tony Pepper. You'll see that Pepper does not have a private message. So we're going to click Review Documents. Continue. Start. It's going to jump all the way to the first required field, which is to sign. Now you'll notice it jumped all the way past all that information on the seller's property disclosure. So I'm just going to scroll up so I can show you that it does actually show what Tony filled in here. So if Pepper wanted to give it a second look, make sure everything is correct, she can just scroll up and you can give her a heads up. Hey, you may want to scroll up to double check that information. Because maybe Tony accidentally selected, oh, we're going to take the washer machine, but we're going to leave the dryer one. No, we're going to take both the washer and the dryer, or leave both of them. I don't know. Just double check that information. So Pepper's going to sign. Same thing for the community association disclosure. Just scroll back up, double check all that. You see it actually fills in the information. She's signed, signed, initial, and sign. So now Pepper is finished. So Pepper is going to click finish. Ask her to log in. We'll click no thanks. And now Pepper has completed signing. All right, so let's go back and let's go to my email. I have now received this document. It's now my turn to sign. So I'm going to click review documents. Continue, start, sign. Now this is where I get to make this binding. So I'm going to go ahead and make this binding at 12 p.m. Sign. And now I'm finished. I don't need to log in. So I'm good. So I finished signing. I'm going to go back into Tony's email because I'm going to show you that in just a moment. One of the really cool things about DocuSign is that once everyone has completed signing, DocuSign automatically sends out an email to all recipients with the completed forms. So this is important because GREC requires that your clients have copies of all the forms that they sign. So this kind of takes out that extra step for us. So just knowing that once everyone signed it, it's good to go. So you can click here, open it up, scroll all the way to the bottom, and here's the signed document. So that's just good to know. And also it's going to send it to you so it's in your inbox. That's also really helpful if you are in a crunch time and you have to get a document over to a co-op agent. You could theoretically just click forward and be like, here's all the documents, go sign them, or whatever. So now that we have our signed documents, I'm going to go back into DocuSign. I'm going to refresh the page. And it's going to show that we have completed that envelope. So everyone is signed. The signed documents are going to be in the Documents tab. And as I mentioned before, anytime a new document is added into the room, it's going to be automatically added into the Room Docs folder. So you can see here we have all of these documents with the green check mark that says signed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of the green checkbox items that are related to the listing agreement. Select all those. I'm going to select move up here, and I'm going to move them into my listing agreement folder. Click move. Perfect. Now I want to take my purchase and sale agreement. So I'm going to select that, and I'm going to move that into folder and current room and contract. Click move. So now I have all of my documents in their correct folder. Now you'll notice here we have our form with the blue icon for purchase and sale, and then our green check mark. Let's say in the event that you are working with a client and you're submitting multiple offers, you would just come back to this form here, this template, and update that form based on the new information. You would not come up here and go to add DocuSign Forms. You could, but DocuSign will not allow you to add the purchase and sale agreement or any other form twice. This is considered a template that you will just update as you go through the process. Now that we have all of our signed forms, we need to send these over to compliance to Lynn and Alita to review. So to do that, I'm going to come back into Command. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click Refresh. Just that way the two systems can be updated. And then what we'll do is we'll come here and we're going to add our forms. It's going to default to attach forms from DocuSign. But let's say if you had to upload something, you could just select from your computer, but we are going to upload from DocuSign. And then our folder. So we've gone through and we've created the folder. So it's super easy. So I'm going to select listing agreement. Now what this is going to do to make it super easy is it's going to show me all the signed documents in my listing agreement folder. So here we're looking for F101. I'm just going to come here. Here's my listing agreement, select that. And it automatically uploads from DocuSign into Command. We'll do the same thing for my community association disclosure. Automatically uploads, seller's property disclosure. And now you'll notice that every time I add a document and then I go to the next one, the list of available documents gets shorter and shorter. That is because once a document is assigned to a document here in Command, I can now upload it to another place as well. So it just makes it even easier for me to add documents. Then we have our Rawls Group affiliated marketing. And super easy is our Rawls Group wire fraud. Now, once you have all of these documents uploaded into Command, your next step is going to be to click Submit to MC. This is going to be what notifies Lynn and Alita that there are documents in Command for them to review for compliance. If you do not click Submit to MC, they will not be aware that there are documents for review, and you will not be able to then submit your offers and commissions to get paid. That is our training for this morning. There's one more thing that I want to show you, but before I do that, I just want to double check to see, are there any questions, anything that I can clarify for you, anything that I can show you again before I show you one last additional feature.
So a recap of this is going to actually be on the YouTube.
Correct. I'm going to upload this video to YouTube.
Okay, got it. It's a lot of information. I'm pretty sure I'm going to forget something.
Yeah, that's why I recorded.
Thank you.
Any other questions or anything? All right. So there's one more feature that I want to show you that's been updated in DocuSign. So I'm going to go back into DocuSign. So here we go. Perfect. Sorry, just trying to reorganize my page here. All right. So remember when we created our envelope, I went to the envelopes tab and then I manually added the documents that I wanted to send for signature. That's the second option of a way of creating an envelope. The other way is by, as I showed you, is selecting all the documents that you want to send for signature. So I'm going to select these forms. I'm just going to select a few of them. Then I'm going to roll my mouse over the this toolbar and go to the Create Envelope tab or icon. Click on that. Now it's going to give me this pop-up window where it's going to allow me to select the people that I want to be included in a recipient. So this is not the same pop-up window that we received when we manually added documents to the envelope. So I just want to make you aware that this is probably going to be a lot easier, probably more of a preferred way to go through the process. And then click Continue. So give this a second to load. I do promise that when DocuSign is taking a long time, that it is actually working. It's just sometimes kind of slow. So here it's already added our documents for us. And then it's added myself as a listing agent, and then seller 1 and seller 2, and included their name and contact information based on the information that I added on the details tab. So that's just going to make it even easier for you when you want to go to send this this envelope, rather than having to click through here, go to room contacts, all that. So I just wanted to point that out. I wanted you to be aware that you could create your envelopes in both ways. And the second way that I just showed you is probably easier, but I do wanted you to know how to manually add documents and everything that we walked through earlier. Any other questions? Anything I can clarify, show you again? We have a couple extra minutes. All right. Well, if there aren't any questions, thank you guys for joining me this morning. I appreciate you. Let me know what questions come up with DocuSign. I'm always here. You can give me a call, text, email me. We can set up some one-on-one time. I would also recommend going through and creating a test room in DocuSign. So that way you can start to get comfortable with the system before you actually start working with clients. So you don't want to test out a new system with clients, especially when things are tight or you're like under a tight timeline and stresses are high. Have a great.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Have a great rest of your Friday, and I will talk to you later. Bye.